finally have the Dragon Age Veilguard system requirements, and they look pretty interesting. Our minimum preset is 1080p 30 FPS, low settings, and for the CPU stuff, I normally ignore those because they are inconsistent and not very accurate, to be honest. And you will see it happen here as well, mainly in the RT section, but yeah, we'll go over that later. But regardless, for the CPU, it's an i5-8400 and a Ryzen 3 3300X. For the RAM, it is 16 gigs across the board, which is nice to see. I would expect 32 gigs to be honest, but 16 gigs is a nice surprise. For the GPU, it's a GTX 970 or a GTX 1650. It says that we need 4 gigs, but the 970 has like 3.5 gigs of actual usable memory, and the last half a gig is pretty much worthless or very slow. On the AMD side, the R9 290X is on par with the 970 in terms of raw power, which is cool to see as well. For the VRAM, it is 4 gigs. That is a nice surprise. I would expect 6 gigs, but 4 gigs again is quite good to see. Down to the storage, it is 100 gigs of SSD or hard drive storage. I think it's best to use an SSD, but hard drives are supported. I would imagine longer load times or maybe pop-in, but the game should be playable with a hard drive as it says right there. Going up to 1440p 30 FPS or 1080p 60 FPS at the high settings from the low settings, that's quite the jump from low to high. Oh, also one note about this whole preset thing, they are using upscaling as it says down here. So keep that in mind, using FSR or DLSS. It is being used for all the presets, I would imagine. So you keep that in mind, it is not native. It is definitely far more intensive than what you see here. And sadly, we can't tell what preset they're using as well. If they're using quality, balance, performance, etc. We can't tell. So it could be very intensive or just a little intensive, you know? But regardless, going up here again, we're playing at the high settings, so the CPU will go up as well from the i5-8400 to an i9-9900K. Quite the jump there. Again, a higher preset, so some of that will be CPU bound, and also a higher frame rate as well. 60 FPS is more work, which means a higher or more powerful CPU is needed. Now the same thing applies to the GPU as well. So going from a 970 to a 2070 now, an RTX 2070. Down to the VRAM, it has gone up from 4 gigs to 8 gigs, which means the 2060, which is near the 2070, it's around 12% slower than the 2070, is going to be falling below this because it only has 6 gigs of VRAM. But the GTX 1080 should be fine since we have the same power as the 2060, but 8 gigs of VRAM. Now, to be honest, this won't be the most accurate because over here, we can go from RT active 4K ultra settings from a 3080 to a 4080. So it makes no sense really. So I'm guessing the 2060 is fine as well, but that's a guess. Keep that in mind. All right, some extra cards that are in range of a 2070. We have the 2060 Super and the 3060. That will be pretty much in line with the 2070 in terms of raw power. The 1080 Ti, the 2070 Super, and the 4060 are near each other with around 10% to 20% more power. And lastly, for the storage, we need to have an SSD. To be honest, the hard drive might play fine. For me in Dead Space Remake, I played the entire game, or almost the entire game, with a hard drive, but nearing the end, the game just broke. It wouldn't load, would have issues, the quest would fail. So it's a bit of a gamble again, but it might work. Going up to 4K ultra settings at 60 FPS, we're going up again on the CPU side to a 12th gen i9 and an RTX 4080, guys. From a 2070 to a 4080 while using upscaling. That's pretty insane. For the VRAM, it is 12 gigs again. The 4080 has 16 gigs, I believe, right? So yeah, we need 12 gigs, which makes this part more confusing. That makes no sense, but I'll get to that in a second. There's not too many cards above the 4080, guys. We have the 4080 Super and the 4090. So yeah, not too many options there. But going down, we have the 4070 Ti Super with near 90% in terms of raw power. We have the 4070 Ti with 80% of the raw power of the 4080. And going down further, we have the 3080 Ti, the 4070 Super, and the 3080 with around 70% of the raw power of the 4080. Now, sadly, we can't tell what they're using with DLSS here, if it's performance, balance, quality, etc. Because, for example, if a 4080 needs balanced DLSS, we could use performance mode and use the 4070 Ti and close the gap, you know? Going up to RT selective, this will be RT used in specific areas, like maybe the character or maybe indoor sections. So it shouldn't be super intensive or as intensive as the other ones. And we're playing at 4K 30 or 1440p 60 at the ultra settings. And weirdly, the CPU goes down. So 4K 60 and 1440p 60, same preset with RT active, which is more CPU intensive, has some parts that are CPU bound, and the CPU goes down. Why? So I'm guessing they're playing at 30 FPS, which would lower the load on the CPU, and that would bring us down to this CPU tier. And weirdly again, a 3080 for RT Active at Ultra. It is a lower frame rate versus the 60 FPS here at the 4080 side, but still we have RT Active, and the VRAM goes down as well. So why is the VRAM going down? 4K, playing at Ultra with RT Active, which is more VRAM intensive in most cases, and the VRAM goes from 12 gigs to 10 gigs. That makes no sense. It should be the same or more. Now regardless, time for some cards that are near the 3080. We could use the 4070 at 94% of the raw power. We could use the 4070 Super, which has 10% more power than a 3080. Same thing goes with the 3080 Ti and the 3090. They're all close to each other in terms of power. The 4070 Ti and the 4070 Ti Super have around 20% to 28% extra power as well. So all those cards and above will do just fine with this preset. Time for RT on, and for that we're playing at 1440p 30 FPS at the Ultra settings. Again, same CPU setup and the same GPU setup as well, 3080 and 10 gigs of VRAM. So the only thing that's different is the frame rate and the resolution. So before we had the option of playing at 30 FPS at 4K or playing at 1440p at 60 FPS. But I would imagine the 40 series doing better here because of the whole RT thing. Again, the 40 series does better in RT versus the 30 series. So I would imagine 4070 Ti and up would do way better. Alright guys, last tab, playing with RT on at the Ultra preset for the RT mode. That is confusing, I know, but stick it out with me. And down for the main preset, 4K 30 FPS at the Ultra settings. Again, CPU goes up to the 12th Gen i9, and the GPU goes up again to the 4080. So the 4080 can do 30 FPS at 4K with the max RT preset. That is pretty wild. I do wonder if the 4090 can do 60 FPS here. I bet it's pretty close, but I guess we'll see when the game comes out in like 2 weeks or whatever. So yeah, that is Dragon Age Veilguard's system requirements. Hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Next video. See you guys there.